Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to today's social studies lesson with Miss Thea. Let's take a trip back to Egypt. Today, our teaching point is going to be researchers learn about how other countries trade. How are we going to do this? By looking at trade maps, learning about goods and resources that were traded, and organizing our noticings in notes. Now let's connect back to our last lesson. During our last social studies lesson, we learned about Egypt's geography. Today, we are going to learn about how Egypt's geography allowed Egypt to trade goods with other places. When we think about geography, we think about the study of Earth's physical features. So we're going to think about the land, um, we're going to think about Egypt's land and the bodies of water that surround it and how it helped Egypt to trade with other places. Countries have to make sure that they meet the needs of their people. One of these ways is by exchanging goods with another country. This exchange is called trade. Think about a time when you traded with someone. Maybe you traded your lunch. Maybe you traded one of your snacks for one of their snacks. Today's vocabulary terms that we're going to learn about are goods, needs, wants, export, trade, and import. These are some words that we're going to be seeing a lot of during this lesson. Goods are things that people want that are manufactured or produced and have an exchange value. Needs are goods or services that are required, such as food, clothing, shelter. Those are things that we need. Wants are things that we don't really need, but are desired, like we really want them. So goods and services that are not necessary but desired, such as ice cream or jewelry. Export means to carry or send abroad, especially for sale in another country. So if Egypt is sending goods to another country, they're exporting goods. Trade is a basic economic concept that involves negotiations and exchanges of goods and services. Trade is not always good for good. Sometimes you trade money for the good that you want to import or get money for the good you want to export. To import means to bring into a country from another country, usually for selling. So if Egypt gets goods from another country, that means those goods are being imported. Let's look at the map. Note how the Nile River, the Gulf of Suez, the Red Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea, among other bodies of water, helped Egyptians transport their goods and trade with other countries and people, both in ancient times and today. So if we look closely, we can see the Mediterranean Sea, we see the Nile River here, we see the Red Sea, we see a lake down here, and we see the Gulf here. And let's look at this map. And I want you to turn and talk. Talk about how does this text feature of this Egyptian trade map best support the information given about Egyptian trade? You can pause this video, think about it, and talk to someone next to you about it. All right. So if we look at this map, we see many different bodies of waters. So I see that this supports the information given about Egyptian trade because I'm thinking that the Egyptians used these bodies of water to travel down and to trade with other places. So I'm thinking they used transportation such as boats or ships to carry their goods to other places and get goods imported from other places as well. Now let's take a look at this map. This map shows various trade routes. And these routes link communities such as Africa, Asia, and Europe. Okay, so Egyptians traveled all throughout this area. And a man named Ibn Battuta began his journey, and he traveled through, and he used all these different routes to travel and to exchange goods with all of these places. So if you look at the red arrows, those show you the different routes that he took. Here are some examples of materials traded in Egypt. So we have gold, we have papyrus, we have linen, we have grain, cedar wood, ebony, ivory, lapis lazuli, incense, myrrh, copper, and iron. So these are all different types of materials that were traded in Egypt. So here's an ancient Egyptian trade fact sheet. It says, ancient Egypt became a rich and powerful civilization because it possessed natural resources and raw materials. Those are materials that come straight from the earth. Ancient Egypt's wealth and power exceeded the wealth and power of many civilizations of the ancient world. Egypt traded many goods with both neighboring countries and distant countries. Egyptians imported and exported goods. So they gave goods to other places and they received goods from other places. Egypt's imports included gold, incense, timber, bronze, pottery, olive oil, ebony, ivory, lapis lazuli, slaves, and the skins of wild animals. Egypt's exports included grain, such as wheat, corn, and barley. The export of grains far exceeded the export of other products. Egypt grew surplus, which is an amount of something left over. So they had a lot of emmer wheat left over and corn crops. They traded the surplus, the goods that were left over, to other countries where these crops were used to make bread and beer. Egypt also exported perfumes and Unguent oils. Egypt was the world's perfume manufacturing center, and its perfumers were called the masters of the art of perfume making. Ancient Egypt was the trading center of the world. Sorry, boys and girls, I mispronounced that word, unguent oils. Okay, so now I want you to think about this. Think about everything that we just learned from this page. I mean, who knew so many resources came from Egypt? Can you think of some things that you or your family used that may have been imported from Egypt? As I read this, I'm thinking, wow, olive oil. I use that all the time. I never knew that, it was imported from Egypt. And also perfume, I use that all the time. So now let's take a look at this map. This is a map of the Middle East. Egypt is located in the present-day Middle East. Trading routes using the Mediterranean Sea gave Egyptians access to Europe, Greece, and Rome and their goods. Trading routes using the Red Sea gave Egyptians access to the luxury goods and markets of the East. Their southern land border with Nubia provided a partner for the trade for gold. Wow. So let's just take a look at this map. You see a lot of bodies of water. Afghanistan was also a trading partner, provided access to the trade routes connecting Mesopotamia, China, and India. And in northern Syria, it gave Egypt access to the trade routes to Mesopotamia, Turkey, which was the center of the great Hittite Empire. Wealthy and powerful ancient Egyptians had long shopping lists of items that they would personally use, as well as materials that their craftsmen needed to create religious and practical objects. Their imported goods included gold, timber, bronze, pottery, olive oil, lapis lazuli, incense, ebony, ivory, slaves, and the skins of wild animals, like we said previously. Egypt's trade partners included Lebanon, Canaan, Rome, Crete, Greece, Cyprus, Phoenicia, Babylon, Assyria, Persia, Turkey, Afghanistan, so many places. These partners gave Egypt's merchants access to goods from India and China and Nubia and the land of Punt, thought to be on the border of Sudan and Ethiopia. Egypt became the center of trade because it was the only ancient civilization that had access to two seas, the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. These seas provided opportunities for far-flung trade. Far-flung means separated by large distance. So here we can see that Egyptians traded with all of these different places. So trade in Egypt today. Here we can see different places that Egypt trades with today. So Egypt exports to China oil, stone plaster, cement, salt, sulfur, stone, glass, cotton, plastics, fruits and nuts, paper, yarn, woven fabric. Wow. Egypt also exports from the United States. Exports to the United States. Clothing, knit or crochet clothing, textile floor coverings, oil seeds, special woven fabric, paper, vegetables, salt, sulfur, stone, and cement. Egypt also exports to France fertilizers, oils, organic chemicals, vegetables, perfumes, cosmetics like makeup. And also Egypt exports to Spain plastics, chemicals, clothing, organic chemicals, iron and steel, aluminum. So as you can see, there are so many different goods that Egypt exports to different places in the world. So now, boys and girls, I want you to complete this chart, and I want you to think about everything that we learned about Egypt and its trade today. Okay, we're gonna think about ancient Egypt and what countries ancient Egypt traded with and what goods they traded with. And we're gonna think about Egypt today. You can find this in your notebook if you go back to your Google Classroom. So you're going to go to your research notebook where we were taking our notes on everything that we've learned about Egypt. You're going to scroll down to Egyptian trade, and you are going to type in the countries that traded with ancient Egypt in the past and the goods that they imported or exported long ago. And then you're going to do the same thing on this side, but for Egypt today. You're going to write down the countries that Egypt trades with today and some goods that they import or export. So if I go back, I can think about what I learned about Egypt today. And I learned that Egypt trades with our country, the United States. So I can type that in. And here I can say that Egypt exports oil seeds, paper. Let's say Egypt exports oil seeds, paper, and let's say vegetables to the United States. So you're definitely going to have to go back to the video and you're going to have to look at the slides in order to complete this chart here. Okay, boys and girls? Wonderful job today, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.